Hi, my name is Jason Badaluca, and this is my capstone pitch for War on Atlas. War on Atlas is a competitive first-person shooter which will take place in a zero-gravity environment. Players will need to maneuver around the circular arena by using barriers to grab onto and hoist themselves in the direction that they want to go in. In this zero-gravity environment, players will need to adapt to not being in full control of their movement. There will be two separate classes that players can use: Grapple class and Thruster class. A grapple will be able to let the player hook onto any of the barriers that are in close proximity, and the thrusters will be able to let the player boost around for a short amount of time before the boosters need to cool down. With the grapple, the player will be able to shoot it at any barrier and will be able to pull themselves to a barrier a lot quicker. When using the thrusters, the player will be able to move around quickly left and right or up and down, but can only do so in a 5-second period before the thrusters have to go in a cooldown mode. Each player will have the same weapon every round, which is a pistol. This pistol has two firing modes: a charge shot and a quick shot. If the player charges their weapon up to 7 seconds and shoots, it will create a large energy shot and can one-shot your enemies. A quick shot can paralyze an opponent if you hit them in the back, but otherwise it will take 6 quick shots to kill an enemy. The game will consist of 8 players max, 4 on one team and 4 on the other. There will also be other options for a 2v2 and 1v1 only mode, which will have smaller arena sizes for these type of game modes. If there are not enough players that join up in time, the game will only start with an even amount of players in the lobby. The game will still be a 4v4, but AIs will fill that last spot up, in which if a player dies early, they can possess that AI to play as the AI. For this game, I thought that Capture the Flag would best suit this type of game, as it will give players a challenge and would help the game become more competitive. And in this game mode, players will need to find a way to get past the enemy team's heavily guarded barriers, capture the flag, and bring it back to base. This game mode will only have 2 lives per person, and if the player loses both lives, the player will have to spectate until the next round. Each round will only be around 5 minutes long, and there will be only 3 rounds in total. This game mode will be using the best 2 out of 3 rule, so the first team to reach 2 rounds won wins the game. For this game, the player's goal is to learn the movements of the game. The gravity will be extremely realistic when it comes to moving around. Objects that can stop you, or even when you're shooting your gun, for example, if the player is trying to move towards an area but then starts to shoot at an enemy, the kickback from the pistol will slow you down and it will eventually make you go the opposite way. So learning how to maneuver around with the gravity will definitely help you become a higher skilled player. But when you become more skilled, the higher ranked you are and the better players you will have to face. So practice will come a long way when it comes to shooting, movement, remembering where you're at, what the game mode objective is, which in this case will be to capture the flag. And the most important is to communicate with teammates and devise strategies to get the flag. The game that I think would be compared to this style of game would be Call of Duty Infinite Warfare and Halo. The reason I think this is because the two games have a lot of futuristic elements to it, and in Call of Duty it has a lot of space maps, and in the campaign you are also fighting on a space station, and you can also float around. But in Halo, it has a super low gravity field which enables a player to jump higher and not take any fall damage. What differs my game from these two is my take on zero gravity environment, and how the player will actually be able to float around freely around the arena. But also in my version of it, the player will also be able to float upside down in any direction. The player will also need to be careful, as they could spin and will continuously spin until they find a barrier to stop themselves. One of the big risks that this game is taking is a realistic take on zero gravity environment. It would take the player some time to get used to floating around and how to boost themselves to where they need to go, but I think one way I could avoid these risks is by implementing them first in early making of the game, so there would at least be some feedback from what people think and feel about it. Not only would the zero gravity environment be a risk for other players to get used to, it would also be a risk to develop a game like this with just a 4-month time frame. I think one way I was able to avoid this risk was cutting down everything to a small scale, like having only one weapon, small arena sizes, as well as one game mode for the time being. I think doing this would help get everything else out of the way quickly and would give us more time to work with zero gravity environment and trying to perfect it. This has been my pitch for War on Atlas, and I hope you enjoyed.